right, let's talk about the Detroit Lions. Look, obviously, the magical season continues. Massive showdown, of course, upcoming in the NFC Championship game against the San Francisco 49ers. But I want to take a step back here. I know everyone's talking about the 49ers. I want to give some credit where credit is due, and that's to Dan Campbell. On this show and at times, offline and online, I've been very critical of Campbell, saying I think he's too aggressive. I think he's playing as and coaching his team as if he's still the underdog without understanding you are actually one of the more talented, well-coached teams in football. You need to change your strategy. You don't have to be hyper aggressive all the time. I think it cost them games against the Chicago Bears, against the Green Bay Packers, and against the Dallas Cowboys. His hyper aggressive focus. And if you look at the data from the regular season, there's a lot of data to support that. Miles, if you pull up the screenshot we got, this is from Fox Sports, excuse me. It has the top two teams in terms of fourth down attempts from the 2023 regular season. The Carolina Panthers, who I believe never led in the game in the fourth quarter, their two wins were on the final play of the game, led the league in fourth down attempts. Again, you're trailing a lot. You're going to attempt a lot of fourth down attempts. Makes sense. But number two is the Detroit Lions with 40, right? That's a little less than 2.5 per game. That's a lot. And this is what concerned me. I'm like, are they going to be too aggressive? Are they not going to play smart football? Are they going to try and just manufacture too many things that aren't there? And will that hurt them in the postseason? What did Dan Campbell do? He learned, he grew and developed against the Los Angeles Rams, 1-for-1 on fourth down. Against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 1-for-1 on fourth down. Exactly one attempt per game. That is the smart strategy. Both the 49ers and the Ravens, the two best teams in football, averaged about one attempt on fourth down per game during the regular season. Dan Campbell, he learned, he grew, he developed, and he's managing this team very intelligently. He's making smart moves. I always say the mark of a great leader is one who can adapt his strategy to fit his circumstances. That's exactly what Dan Campbell is doing here. I think it's great strategic decision making. Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. But first, Lions fans, magical season, right? Here you go. One win away from the Super Bowl. Give us your prediction in the NFC Championship game. Final score, Lions 49ers in the comment section below. But Miles, give me your thoughts on Dan Campbell's growth and his development as a game manager and how it's worked out for them in the playoffs.
Yeah, Nick, I think when you look at the stats here, you look at number one versus number two, it kind of speaks for itself in the fact that it seems odd that the Lions are here, especially in the regular season. We've obviously learned they've grown, they've learned in the postseason, but you go back to the stats 40 times, like you said, almost 2.5 times per game. It seems like a lot to be going for it on fourth down when you have been a really great team all season. I think there's just not a lot of there's a too much added risk there, might I say. And the Lions won a lot of games that were by more than one score. So you feel like they're not in a lot of situations where it's necessary for them to go for it on fourth down. And I think it brings back to the point you bring up of Dan Campbell just not yet being there in the regular season as far as thinking, hey, we deserve to be here. We deserve to be one of the best teams in the NFC. We're going to have to prove it. We always have to go in this game with a chip on our shoulder. It's like that, fake punt, fake kick, go for it on fourth down, that kind of mentality. Now he's made it to the playoffs. I think everything's coming together. I think he's realizing, hey, we are a really good team. And like you said, we need to adapt and play like the other really good teams in this league. Not stylistically, at least smarts wise, checking the analytics, seeing when it is appropriate to go for things, not always gambling all the time. And I think that is partially why the more reserved, game plan as far as not rolling the dice so many times is why the Lions are in the situation they are right now. Because you look at these last two games, those were pretty tight games versus the Rams and the Bucks. The Bucks one looks a little bit further apart than it was, but at one point in the Bucks game was very, very close. And one of those gambles goes the wrong way. The Lions could be watching this coming weekend's game at home on their couch. But they played it perfectly. I think they were just aggressive enough, and they aren't making these crazy decisions anymore because they have settled in and they realize they belong. Heck, you made it all the way to the NFC Championship game. You're doing something right. So kudos to Dan Campbell. This is almost like a halftime adjustment with the halftime being coming into the postseason. He's doing a really great job, and I'm excited to see them play the 49ers this weekend.
It's not talked about enough in the media. It really isn't, and I think it should be. Is people talk about what Dan Campbell has done for the team, and people always want to talk about the fact, oh, the leadership he had when they were 3-13-1, and last season after the rough start through the first 8 or 9 games, and of course they're saying, oh, he's the same guy. Clearly, this postseason, it's completely different. My biggest concern with the Lions and Myers, I know you and I talked about this, and like, boy, in close games in the playoffs, is Dan Campbell going to try and do something too aggressive and hurt his team? Which, going into the Final Four, they were the more talented team than the Buccaneers. They were the more talented team than the Rams, right? They've got a lot of talent. I give the 49ers, win healthy, the edge in the talent department against Detroit, but it's not by a huge margin. This is a team that, on paper, especially with their coordinators, can compete and beat anybody in the NFL if you let your guys play, if you let your coaches coach. My one concern would be that would the Lions be too over aggressive and take the ball out of Jared Goff's hands, out of Amon-Ra St. Brown's hands, out of Jahmyr Gibbs' hands, and just leave it up to one fluky fourth down play, one trick play, one fake punt, whatever. But they haven't. They proved me wrong. This is the beauty of Dean Campbell, is he's learned and adapted his coaching style to the postseason. This is why the Lions have won the last 2 playoff games. Quarterback play has been outstanding. There's no denying that. Running game has been very good. Defense has been clutch, even though they've given up a lot of yards. But it's been Dan Campbell's managing of the game. It's not getting the credit I think it deserves. And this, I think, is what gives them a chance against Shanahan and the 49ers. Because the 49ers, they rely on things just coming in waves. They rely on scoring 28, 21 points in a quarter, just taking over a game. But teams that can manage the game and slow it down, really make the 49ers work for it, like the Baltimore Ravens, like the Cleveland Browns, like the Green Bay Packers last week. Those games can get interesting. Those games are usually very, very close. Dan Campbell is managing games to that style right now, and I think that gives the Lions a serious chance to beat the 49ers this Sunday.